Hi everyone, welcome again to Bake Your Way Kitchen. Today I'm excited to share with you another recipe, Bittersweet Chocolate Mousse Cake. And this is actually an adaptation from Cook's Illustrated. And this has been a long-time favorite of ours. And there's so few ingredients in here. And I'll tell you, you need 2/3 of a cup, about 140 grams of light brown sugar, a pinch of salt, and I just get the salt shaker in that case. And this is where the adaptation comes in. It's usually about a teaspoon that they call for of vanilla extract. What I like to do is I use about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I use 2 teaspoons of coffee extract. And I know that that is not as common, but if you can find it, use it. And especially if you love the chocolate coffee combination. If you don't, by all means, just keep it vanilla, but this is how I like to do it. And usually what I do is I mix the vanilla and coffee for a little bit. I don't know why, but somehow I feel it really does make a difference. Maybe that's all in my head, I don't know. In this bowl right here, over a pot that I'm going to bring to the stove to get the water to simmer, I need to melt our butter and chocolates. And what I have here is unsalted butter, and you are going to need 3/4 of a cup. That would be 3/4 of a cup. And then you're also going to need 1 square of unsweetened chocolate. If you don't have, if the ones you have aren't coming in these little already pre-done squares, this is a 1 ounce square, which is 28 grams. You can just use 28 grams of unsweetened chocolate. Then you will need 12 ounces, which is about, I believe, 340 grams of bittersweet chocolate. And you can use any bittersweet chocolate you want. There's very few ingredients in this, so like I say in my other videos, use a good quality chocolate. It's very, very, very important. And what I also did, I added, and this is not necessary, but I added it. I added about 2 tablespoons of milk chocolate, these little milk chocolate callets. And the reason I do so is because the milk chocolate, it adds a creamy kind of texture, I just find. So I always add just a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is bring this to the stove over simmer, and then let this water come to a simmer, and then melt the butter and chocolates together, and I will show you the next step. So while your chocolate is melting, you can prepare your pan. You're going to need a 9-inch springform pan. And a springform pan is just got a pop-up bottom that you can remove like that and put in place. It's pretty important that you do use a springform pan, simply because, sorry, this isn't working for me right now. There we go. There we go. Back to normal. All right. It's very important that you use a springform pan, because we're going to need to pop this out after. It's going to be very difficult because chocolate mousse is very delicate to take it out after it's baked. You can preheat your oven to 325 degrees Celsius, which is 180 degrees Celsius, and you're going to want to put your rack in the bottom third for this baking. Now, this is literally all the parchment paper I had left, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to do what I can. And you know what? Sometimes you're in that situation and you just got to go ahead. So what you're going to need to do is spray this. Now, I kind of just spread it out with the parchment paper, and then place whatever parchment paper you have at the bottom. Ideally, it should be just a circle to go along the bottom. And it is very important that you do grease the sides. If you want, as an option, what also helps is using a little bit of flour for the sides, but if you want to keep this gluten-free as much as possible, then you're going to not want to use flour. Or you can use a spray. Like this spray actually has flour in it, so I don't even need to use flour in this case. So once you've lined it, you can just put it aside, and then once we are ready, we will go ahead and put our chocolate dessert in our prepared baking pan. important component I forgot to mention is the eggs in this recipe when I was introducing the video. You're going to need 8 egg whites and 8 egg yolks separated. It's very important, and it's a good idea to let them come to room temperature. So I was putting them aside and I forgot to mention it, so that's why I wanted to specify it now. It is important that the eggs come to room temperature. We're going to need to beat these separately, which is why we separated the eggs. And yeah, so I'm going to put that aside. And you're probably going to need 2, like in my case, I'm going to be using an electric mixer for my egg whites, and I'm going to be using a handheld mixer for the egg yolks, simply for the reason it just saves on time. You will need to beat both of these separately, as you'll see in a minute. So our chocolate is now done, so I'm just going to come bring it over, and I will show you what to do next. Alright, so as you can see, our chocolate is nicely melted, and it's got a real shine to it. It's quite nice. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to whisk in to this, and by the way, this chocolate has cooled slightly for the egg yolks. I'm going to add in my vanilla coffee extract mixture and the egg yolks. And we're going to mix this well. In case the chocolate is still very hot, we need to beat it so that we're kind of tempering those egg yolks. And look how rich looking that is. It's thickened up so much, it's so shiny. And that's coming from the egg yolks. And the egg yolks in this recipe, we're using 8 egg yolks, so this is providing a really rich flavor. And that's critical in a mousse recipe. And let me be honest, oh my goodness, it smells incredible. So you can see it's thickened up quite a bit, and I think I've made this already clear in this, but there's no flour. This is completely flourless. And this thickened up from those egg yolks. So we're going to set this mixture aside for a second, and in the meantime, in a separate bowl, we're going to put our egg whites. There they go. The 8 egg yolks, and I'm just going to add a little pinch of salt to get it going, and I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to beat this for about 20 seconds. And we're going to need to add in our brown sugar. So we're using 2/3 of it, 2/3 of a cup. So I'm going to put 1/3 of a cup in when the egg whites get frothy, which they've become now. So I'm going to stop it for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, this is on good. There you go. Nice and frothy. I hope you caught that. So now I'm going to add in 1/3 of the sugar, or I guess half of the sugar. I'm using 1/3 of a cup of 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And we're going to beat this till it gets to soft peaks, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So as you're whipping it to soft peaks, when the sugar is incorporated, you can add the remaining sugar. And now we're going to beat it to soft peaks. So just add from the 2/3 cup you start with. Originally start with 1/3 of a cup, then once it's incorporated, then add the remaining sugar until we reach soft peaks. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. You're going to need to put the mixer on high. If you're using a hand mixer or doing this by hand, it will take longer. Alright, we've now reached our soft peaks. In fact, I might have put this a little longer than I needed to, but I'll just show you. If I droop it, see it's still drooping down. See? That's what you want. So, what we're going to do now that we've gotten this all incorporated, is we're going to take this and add it into our chocolate mixture that we have here. Oh my goodness, I can't wait for this. I'm sorry, I'm a little excited, I'm not going to lie. So what we're going to do is just start off with about 1/3 of the mixture. So we're going to add in about 1/3. Maybe I added maybe a little more than 1/3. just to lighten it up at first. And I'll just show you. So this is what the egg whites are supposed to look like. There's streaks of chocolate because I used a spatula that's chocolate, but that's the consistency you want for soft peaks for the egg whites. And I'll just show you here what I'm mixing. I'm just going to incorporate it. Remember what I talked about in the previous video. You turn, swirl up and down, kind of do side up, side up, side up, instead of whipping it. You're not trying to whip it, because if you whip it, it's gonna, your mixture is going to shrink very quickly. So make sure you do this. And once it's lightened up a little bit, it doesn't need to be fully mixed through yet. So once it's lightened up a bit, you can add the remaining egg whites that we have here. And try to get as much of it as you can. You can never get every little drop from the bowl, but it's important to get as much as you can. Let me tell you guys, this dessert, it is something else. Let me just say that. There we go. And I mean, to be quite honest, I mean, it's not a crazy amount of time to put together. One thing you should know about this dessert, just as I'm folding all these egg whites in, is that this does require lots of refrigeration. I would recommend making this dessert the day before, because if you don't, you're going to need to wait at least 7 hours. And this isn't, you can't just quickly pop this in the freezer, and then the fridge. No, because this dessert needs to be done correctly, like 100%. Yeah, so you don't want to mess with the cooling, because it really will make a big, big difference. And this recipe is going to be quite rich, not only because of the chocolate that we're using and the amount of chocolate that we're using, but also the amount of egg yolks that we're using. The egg yolks are really going to make this incredible. The more egg yolks you add, as a rule of thumb in baking, the more egg yolks you add, the richer the flavor. So try to get to the bottom, because some chocolate tends to stick there. And these folding motion, it will take you a little bit of time, because it is hard to get absolutely it all. Especially try to go to the middle, because sometimes that stuff gets left behind. You're just going to try to fold it all in. There we go. And don't worry if you see streaks of chocolate when you're done, like that are darker. It's just bound to happen. So now what you're going to need to do, you have your oven set, is put this in your springform pan. So I'm just going to do that now. And watch, you're going to see that there is a little bit of chocolate streaks showing up, especially as we hit the bottom. It's just how it is. My hands are getting filthy. They're not filthy, clean with chocolate. I can't complain. Alright. I hope you're seeing this okay. It's kind of funny right now. I'm using a bunch of books to get the right camera positioning. I've got like 16 books piled on top of each other, so I hope you're getting the right shot. Try to use all your chocolate. Here we go. And just spread that out a bit. And I guess I'll take the bowl. And just give it a quick tap, 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 tap. Get rid of any air bubbles. Now, the next thing you're going to need to do is get some type of dish that is got high sides and that is longer, because we need to put an inch of hot water up the sides. I've added about an inch of water to go up the side. And I just used the hot water that I use for simmering the chocolate. I just heated it up a little more, because you don't want it to be cold water. You want it to be warm. So maybe just if you got rid of that water, just put some water on the stove and just heat it, not too boiling, maybe just below a simmer. Like, you just want it hot. So now what we're going to do is put this in our 325 degree oven, which is in the lower third of center, and we're going to be putting this in the oven. It's so hard to say, and with this dessert you really need to be careful, because you can really make this go completely wrong if you don't follow the time, if you don't keep watch. I would say anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. And what you're looking for, I would say more 35 to 45 minutes. The reason I use such drastic times, usually, like especially when I make stuff, I always have to lower the temperature in my oven, because usually for my oven it's very small and the fan is going, it bakes very, very quickly. And for some instances, for things that I made before, I usually take half the time that it calls for. So that's why I say it. But what you're looking for, the top will crack a bit, and if you insert a toothpick in the center, it will still come out moist. That's what you want. You want that. What we're trying to do with the low temperature, having this at a lower temperature than normal, is we want it to overbake on the outside but still be nice and kind of raw on the inside. So you want to keep watch. You do not want to overbake this, otherwise it'll defeat the purpose. So keep watch. You want the top surface to look a little on the overdone side, not too much, maybe crack a little bit, but if you insert a toothpick in the center, it still comes out wet. So I'm going to place this in the oven. I'll tell you the time it takes for me, and I will show you the next step. So I've taken it out of the oven, and for my oven it took 30 minutes. So there you go. My oven's very quick, so it might take yours a little more, a little less, likely more. But anyway, so I immediately removed it from the pan. I immediately removed it from the water bath and let it cool for about 3 minutes on this heat-proof mat, and then put it on a rack. Now what I'm going to just do is run an offset spatula, or you could use a knife, or what else could you use? Or a flat edge spatula, whatever you have on hand, just to loosen up the sides, because you don't want, as it cools, for it to stick. Alright, there you go. So now what you're going to want to do is let this come at least to room temperature. It should be about, I would say, 3 hours. And then what you're going to need to do is wrap it in plastic. Wrap the entire thing, including the whole pan, in plastic once it's cooled down completely, and put it in the fridge, preferably overnight, but for at least 8 hours. I know it's a lot, and I know you might just want to dig into it, but if you want this to taste incredible and have that nice smooth consistency that you expect with a chocolate mousse, it needs that time. Now, just so you know, in terms of the baking, you can see that the outside is cracked and it has risen. Those are two signs that it is definitely done. And if you really want to get technical, if you put a thermometer in the inside, it should be around 170 degrees. 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's just a way to measure. Anyways, so I will be back to show you it cooled. I am bringing this to a special occasion, and so unfortunately I won't be able to take a taste for you, but I will certainly report on how amazing it is. It already smells great, but it's going to be even better. So just make sure that you really watch it carefully so that you don't overbake it, and it's going to turn out delicious.